Hello everyone, welcome to my video. I have here a PS3 FAT. The model is K04 and it has a yellow light of death. So let's try and fix it. So let's first try and open it. We just need to remove this little rubber plug to unveil a screw, which is a T8 screw that allows us then to remove the cover. So my bit was too short, I need to do something here to get into the screw and unscrew it. So now let's remove the cover for the hard drive. The hard drive has just a normal screw that we need to remove in order to take out the full hard drive. Looks a bit dirty. This console, I found it on a flea market. The guy told me that it was fully working. It's clearly not, so let's see if we can do something about it. So we removed now the top cover, and we'll need to remove a few screws in order to remove the inside cover as well. So in order to avoid confusions with the screws, they are all the same size except one, and it's marked on the cover with a S, which stands for S small. So now we'll just need to lift up the cover from the back part. There's a little clip that we need to press on the corner in order to lift it. There we go. So this console is in really bad shape. I'm not sure if it was opened before, but it doesn't seem like it. It's full of dust, rust, and it's a mess. The Blu-ray reader is all bent, so we need to take care of that as well. But first, let's just remove a few screws in order to get into the board. So we start for removing the power supply. It has a few screws, like 5 I believe. So we need to give it a little push because it has a clip below it. As you can see, it's very dirty. We'll take care of that later on. My hands, they all get all dirty with, I don't know, dust and whatever it is. As you can see, it's all rusted. Maybe it was outside for a while, I'm not sure. It's a pity to see a classic like this in a condition like this is. So to remove the DVD Blu-ray reader, we just need to unplug the power and unplug the flex cable. We need to lift up the little clip on the connector. I use the spudger here just to help me out. Let's now remove all the screws around the plate to get access to the board eventually. There are a few screws, some with a round head, some with a flat head. The ones that have a flat head, it's written on the plate with an M and an arrow pointing to the place where you should put them, so it's easy to remember when you are putting it back together. This specific one, it was very hard to remove, and the screw got all stripped, and I need to remove this pair of pliers that apply pressure on the round of the screw, and eventually I managed to remove it. I have another screw from another PlayStation I used to have that I kept, and I will replace it eventually. We now remove the processor clips. We remove the power switch screw and all the cables connecting still to the board. I'll just remove this little gluey thing that holds on the Bluetooth antenna. And now we lift the plate. As you can see, below it's not that bad, but on top it's all rusted. We remove this cover for the daughter board as well. Apparently there was some humidity on top of it. The daughter board was all dirty as well. Now time to remove the motherboard and see what it looks like. It does need a bit of a push because the thermal paste is very dried. I believe no one got this far if someone opened it eventually, since the thermal paste looks like the original one. It is a bit dirty, but doesn't look that bad. Let's see what we can do. Now let's keep on removing screws. Let's take out the fan. So this power switch, it comes from below. It has a small clip. You just need to pull the clip and push. Let's have our first look in the evaporators. They don't look that bad, although they're a bit dirty. Now, time for a bath. Let's clean all this dirty console. So what I used here was just warm water with some dishwasher. Also used the nail brush as well, and also the toothbrush and some parts. On this cover to avoid more damages, more scratches, I just used a microfiber cloth. As these are aluminum, it's okay to put them into the water because they will never get rusted, so should be fine. Just beware that they bend very easily, so be gentle when cleaning. This part is just to remove the harder thermal paste, but eventually I will clean it with isopropyl alcohol, which comes out very easily. And now to the bathtub to rinse all of the covers and plastics. It's easy with the shower, and then just let it dry out a little bit there. So we now get to clean the motherboard. Firstly, I use a toothbrush to remove all the dust and whatever it is that is on the board. And now we go to the isopropyl alcohol to do a more deeper cleaning. Also, don't push too hard on the brush because you may release some components that will be very hard to find because they are quite tiny. So be aware of that. Just do a gentle scrub when you're using the toothbrush, either when cleaning or when using the isopropyl alcohol, so it gets properly cleaned. We now use the isopropyl alcohol with a little cotton makeover remover just to take out the dried out thermal paste from the processor and from the GPU. And a cotton swab just to do a proper cleaning on the sides and on the top. There it is, nice and shiny. We continue to clean with isopropyl alcohol on the sides, just to remove the excessive dried out thermal paste and any residue that was left from the first cleaning. We do the same procedure here for the daughter board. It has the USBs and I believe the Wi-Fi. Same thing applies here on this board as well. Here you can do all the pressure you want. On this cover, just to test out, I used the toothbrush to remove the excess rust, and I will try out a product that I have here in Portugal to remove the rust and bring back the shine to see if it works. So this is the product. It's called the Duraglit. You probably will find a similar thing on your country. So we just put a little bit on top of the rust and rub it with one sandpaper sponge that is usually used to sand walls before you paint them. And as we can see, it does remove the rust quite well. So it's a success. We will now use this agars. This is international, so you probably can find them. This is just to give a little bit of shine to the metals and also to prevent the rust from coming back. So we rub a little bit on a sponge and pass it on the metal that we want to recover. It is a little bit shinier, but I think it will withstand time after this. So we now proceed to do the rest of the board, of the cover, sorry. I realized it was probably better to use a glove to protect my hand because this is a bit corrosive. And just so you know, after this video my skin started to shed, so use a glove on both hands if possible, just for your own safety. As we can see now, it looks much better than it was before. Now let's apply the same treatment on the bigger cover. Firstly with the toothbrush to remove the excess rust. Or if you have a harder brush, you can use a harder brush as well. So we do a small cleaning on the switch as well. So we now clean the cooler, which is one of the most important parts because it cools down the console, obviously. So we will then use a toothbrush to clean all the dirt that it has. Try and clean in between the blades as well, because it also, this one specifically, also smells a lot like old and dusty. So when you turn on the console, just to avoid that smell coming off, make sure to clean it properly. Sanitize it with a bit of isopropyl alcohol as well. Use the Q-tip just to get into the harder to reach parts that the brush can't go. After we're done with the cooler, also remember to do the same on the cables, because they all hold dirt and smells, so make sure to do a proper sanitization in everything. Also on these flex cables, use a Q-tip to clean the contacts. Not that they were very dirty, but always good to have them cleaned up so they contact properly and you don't lose any information. So on our way to the disk reader, we give it a proper clean on the outside. We then remove all the screws in order to take out the top cover. So now we try to bend it back to its original state. It will never get to its original state, but as close as that as possible, just to avoid the disc being scratched or getting stuck. I believe this is as good as it gets, so we start cleaning. We need to remove a few more screws in order to get inside to the reader and have a look at the laser. There are two clips on the side that you need to push in order to remove this top part. There's also a screw beneath. And I also had to take this flex cable out, otherwise it wouldn't come off. So this is the bottom part of the DVD Blu-ray reader. So once inside, we clean it with a Q-tip and a bit of isopropyl alcohol to clean the lens and all the parts that are dirty. There were a few parts that had a bit of dust, nothing really serious. Some hairs grabbed onto the grease that was on the railings and on the gears. So in order to lubricate the gears, I use a bit of Vaseline, which is essentially grease that you need to have there. And we start putting it back together. We now start on our power supply. Same thing again. First toothbrush to remove any excessive dirt and dust. Oh, I forgot this. I will put it off camera. So these are not easy to open up. They have a few screws that were very well tight, and also the sides have very strong clips that you need to use usually a strong spudger to unclip them. You are not supposed to go inside these because you can get very injured, eventually even die of a shock. So it's always better to be on the safe side and do not open these if you don't know what you're doing. So to handle this with safety, I used a rubber glove in order to hold on to the board itself. And since the toothbrush is rubber and plastic, it is not conductive, so I didn't use a glove on the other hand. There was a screw still missing on the inside for this to be separated. So to put it back together, just do the reverse steps and you're good to go. So after this, we will now attempt our first fix on this console. I read somewhere that heating up these to 400 degrees should get the solder balls that are broken on these ships back together, and it will contact and it will bring it back to life. We will see if that works. So you should heat up these at around 400 degrees for 3 minutes or so in each of the ships, and then let it cool. Do the same on the bottom part. Careful not to hit any of the small components on this side, because otherwise it will be very difficult to see where they are, where they were, and it may be complicated. So just heat it up at a distance and let it dry out and cool. So while the board cools down, we clean these dissipators or evaporators, whichever you would like to call them. I use a little Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol to soften the hard thermal paste. And after this, we do a test to see if it worked, which clearly did not. So I now pass on to the other try, which is removing the neck tokens that are very well known for this fault to happen. I also read that there is a Syscon reader, but I don't have the material to do that, so I would just blindly try to fix this by just replacing these two chips for the tantalum capacitors. So I'm now removing the neck tokens in cold, because I read it is much easier like that instead of heating up and removing with an iron and with hot air. So it actually is very easy. I'm using here a normal screwdriver, a precision one, because it's smaller, and just insert it very carefully beneath the plastics, and it comes right off. It's very easy. And now in order to clean it, I use a smaller screwdriver just to take the small bits that are left stuck, and also to scrape a little bit of the leftovers of the solder, just to make sure that the new solder will make a proper contact. So this part that I'm scraping is the plus side, and the interior beneath those lines, it's the negative side. So when you are installing the tantalum capacitors or any other chip that you have to take this in consideration. So usually on the chips, on the tantalum capacitors, it either has a minus sign or as a stripe to indicate the negative side of the chips. Okay, so beware of that when you are installing them. So in order to remove the rests of the solder, I use solder wick with iron heated up and up to 350 degrees Celsius, just to make sure that it's very well scraped and that the new solder will apply decently on these pads. So after a scrub it is clean enough, and we can now start the process of putting a new tantalum capacitor. So firstly we heat up the board a little bit to apply the new solder. I use the tip that is flat on the bottom in order to spread out the solder on the pad. So I firstly attempted to do this without hair, but as I don't have flux, I only have solder paste, it did not work because the solder would not get liquid for some reason, and the tantalum capacitor was not adhering to the solder I just put on the pads. After a few tries I decided then to heat up the little pads on the tantalum capacitor, and it got welded. So it's stuck in place, and I use this method instead of the hot air. So after I applied these 4 tantalum capacitors, I decided it was not good enough, so I used a bit of solder paste to use the hot air and remove all the chips and do it all over again to make it better. For your information, this is the very first time I'm doing this, so bear with me. And if I'm doing any mistakes, you can also let me know on the comments what can I do better, because it's the first time that I'm applying this and I was a bit nervous on this as well, as I worked on this video for almost 12 hours. So applying now the last capacitor, just applying a bit of heat for it to be properly fixed. Now the moment of truth. Yes. Let's connect it to the TV. There it is. It has a picture. Bad for a first timer. So I will now apply the thermal paste because it didn't have any. I was just testing. Let's clean the pads first. So I'll use this method to spread out with the peak that the thermal paste brought, because it was just a tiny bit inside the tube, and we spread it out a little bit so it's very even. And after all this is done, we apply a little bit a blob on the middle to avoid gas bubbles when you put it back together with the evaporator, just to make sure that all the bits are covered, and we put it back on its natural place and build the console all back up again. So with a bit of editing, we're back. Let's connect it and test it out. This is one of the remotes that I've restored on a previous video that came with this console as well. So if you want to have a look. So we will use the Assassin's Creed, the original one, to test out the console. So this is it. Hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed doing it, definitely. So you can help me out by subscribing. Let's try to hit the 1000 subscriber mark. And if you think I should delete this console, let me know. I will try that. Or if you think it's okay like this, just tell me to leave it alone. but I would appreciate your opinion. So thank you very much. Here's the state of the console after all the repairs are done. So subscribe, like, unlike, whichever you enjoy more. So see you on the next video. Bye bye.